So you're thinking, should I take singing lessons? Or maybe when should I take singing lessons? Or maybe should I just go onto YouTube and check out some of those singing tutorials and there? We're going to be tackling that question today. I want to share 3 very simple mental checks that you can use to help you make this decision. Hey everyone, welcome back to Singing Simply. My name is Ivan, and on this podcast, our goal is to demystify learning how to sing and make it as simple and as easy as possible for you, the listener. And if this is something that you're interested in, make sure to hit that subscribe and follow. We post episodes and tutorials every single Friday. So if you want to stay updated with that, this is the place to go. Now, before I jump into the 3 mental checks, a couple of things I want to handle, a couple of misconceptions that I want to handle. So first of all, you'll notice as I go through this episode, I won't be talking about time or money, right? Some of you might be thinking, if I had enough money or if I had enough time, I would take singing lessons. I would take singing lessons without a heartbeat. If I had the time, if I had the money, I would do it without a heartbeat. Now, I want to challenge your thinking here because hear me out. I've had students come work with me in my 3-month summit program who arguably were in a similar situation. There's some of them were uni students and they didn't have the money or they didn't have the time to invest into their singing. But the crazy part is I often see 2 very different scenarios. The first one is a student who comes in and they're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. They let that reason dictate everything, which means because they didn't have the money, because they didn't have the time, they didn't take the action. They didn't make the decision. They didn't make the commitment. On the other side, though, I've had students who were faced with the same scenario, which is I didn't have the money. I'm still a uni student. I don't really have a job yet. I'm kind of really, really busy with study at the moment. But it's really interesting. You'll see that some people would use that as a reason to make it work, which is I don't have the money right now, but because I want singing so much, I'm going to pick up a part-time job. I can make it work. And similar to when it comes to time commitment, okay, I've got a very busy schedule, I'm studying, but I'm just gonna maybe block off 15 minutes or rearrange my schedule to make it work. And so the reason why I'm sharing this with you is no matter what happens to you, no matter what situation you feel like you are in, you've always got that choice on how you respond. And so I'm going to leave you with that. So when should we actually take singing lessons? When is it actually important to make that jump? Because here's the thing. If you asked me a couple of years back, when I first started teaching singers, I would have told you, heck yes, you got to take singing lessons. If you want to get better, you need to take singing lessons. Now, over these couple of years though, my answer has changed a bit. I don't think this is entirely true because similar to, for example, learning how to code, learning any kind of skill, there's an abundance of information out there. Similar to what we do here with this podcast, on my YouTube channel, all of this is sharing content and information that is genuinely helpful and can actually help you improve. But ultimately, when it boils down to the real benefit of singing lessons, there's really just 2 things. When you're jumping into singing lessons, it's either you're getting convenience or you're getting speed. Now, I'm going to be talking about this in the mental checks in a second, but really what we're talking about here when it comes to singing lessons is the ability to get better at singing faster and with less confusion. So this is where the real benefit of singing lessons really come in. So let's jump straight into mental check number 1. You're not seeing results. And so this is a big reason why a lot of students will initially reach out to me because a lot of them have actually got some singing experience. They've tried to work on their voice for some time. They've jumped on YouTube, they've done the warm-ups, they've done the workouts, but they aren't seeing results, right? They're working on their voice day in, day out. They're actually putting in the work, right? But they're not seeing results. Their voice seems to be the same. And I can relate to this a lot because you might have heard me say this time and time again. My very first couple of years of singing, I was doing singing programs. I was jumping into all these programs that were designed to help me work on my voice on my own. But I didn't see results. No matter what, I just felt like my voice was in a very similar boat, in a very, very, very similar boat. And so this might be you in the moment. You might be doing the work right now, but you don't feel like you are getting better. If that's the case, this is where I think singing lessons can be really, really helpful because when you take that step, the challenge with learning how to sing on your own sometimes is you don't have a feedback loop or you don't have a good feedback loop, which means when you're singing, you don't know if you're doing things right or wrong. And this becomes a really, really challenging problem because the challenge here is you might be doing an exercise completely wrong and you wouldn't even know it. Right? Or maybe you might be doing an exercise right, but because you didn't know that you're doing it right, maybe you even thought you were doing it wrong, you kind of just tried another way. And so then you start bouncing around between all these different ideas without really making tangible progress. Now, a caveat though, If you're not seeing results after 1 to 2 days, this is normal. A lot of people come to me and they're like, I've just started working on my singing for, a couple of days and I'm not seeing results. Am I quote unquote screwed for the rest of my life? I want to reassure you that is not the case. You need to give it a bit more patience. And so if you've honestly just started learning how to sing, give it a bit more time. Go search around YouTube a bit more. Go spend a bit more time exploring your voice. I've even got some episodes linked previously that can help you with this. But the most important part is give it a bit more time. What I'm talking about here is people who have spent, a couple of months, maybe even years working on their voice, and they still feel like their voice is in the same position, if not worse. This is what I'm talking about. This is a mental check that you need to get some assistance from a voice teacher. Now, mental check number 2, maybe you are seeing results, maybe you are seeing improvements, but you're not seeing it as fast as possible, but you want to improve faster. Now, this is also a perfectly valid reason to start pursuing singing lessons. Because coming back to this idea of the feedback loop, right? Getting a solid feedback loop. Think of singing as figuring out a maze. When you kind of go into a maze and there's all these different paths that you can take and you're trying to obviously get out, right? There's all these different paths that you can take. Now, there's a few things you can do. You can either take the path and you can kind of go to some of those dead ends, maybe some of those paths that won't lead anywhere, and you walk back. You realize, okay, that's really not the place I should be going. So you take a step back. And sometimes you might take another path and then you realize that is also a dead end. And then ever so often you find that there's this little path that you're like, oh, hang on. I think this one might actually go a bit further. And so you take that path. This is going to be similar to what happens when you're learning how to sing. There's all these different paths that you can take. Some of them might not actually lead anywhere. Now, imagine this. Imagine if you had someone who actually did that maze already. You had someone who've already had a bit of experience doing that maze or a similar maze. And as you're going through this maze together, rather than going through those wrong ends, those ends that might lead to nowhere, he can actually tell you, oh, hey, hang on. Why don't we just go left? Why don't we just go right? It's just as simple. I've done this before. This is the beauty of singing lessons. This is where you can improve a lot faster because you're being guided by someone who's gone through a similar path as well. And so really for you, if you feel like you're in this boat where you're making progress, but it's not as fast as you'd like, this is where finding someone to guide you through this, someone who has this experience, this is going to be really, really important. Now, the last mental check, and this might not actually be one that you're expecting, is if you feel like your singing journey is quite lonely, you feel like you're on your own, and maybe if you feel like you even want to quit, this is going to be a really important mental check for you to get some support, get some assistance with your singing. And the reason why I know this is true is a lot of the students that I work with in my summit, which is a 3-month program, you've got our one-on-ones and you've also got our group lessons and our community going on. One of the biggest reasons why they keep going, why they keep pushing and they keep striving to become a better singer is they get inspired by each other. Right? They see each other working, striving towards a better goal. Now, contrast this with maybe trying to learn how to sing on your own. You're not really challenging yourself. You're not really seeing that progress. It's going to be a lot easier to feel lonely and maybe even give up early into the journey because maybe the emotions get to you. Maybe you're getting frustrated. Maybe you're not seeing the progress that you want. And so if you're feeling lonely or if you feel like, I'm about to give up, this is where I also think singing lessons can really help fill that gap. So these are the 3 mental checks. Number 1, if you're not seeing results, yes, this is when singing lessons are an absolute must. Now, the second one is if you want to improve faster, if you're that person who wants to challenge and get to your results faster, find someone who can guide you to that path. And the last one is if you're feeling lonely, if you feel like I'm about to give up, this is another sign that maybe a singing lesson is something that could really, really help you. Now, I'm going to pre-frame this. I'm going to share this before we wrap up this episode. Singing lessons are not a magic pill. And so if you come to me and you're like, hey, Ivan, does this mean I never have to kind of put in practice time? I don't need to practice at all. Some of you might be thinking about that. I don't know. No, that is not the case because think of it like this. 0 times 0 is equal to 0. If you don't put in that time, no matter what I share with you, you never put that into practice, it's not going to improve your voice, right? Singing lessons are, once again, not a magic pill. It's not a silver bullet. Think of it as an accelerator, a way to help you get better. So team, this wraps up our episode for today. Hopefully this gives you an idea of when you should be considering singing lessons and maybe when you shouldn't. right? When singing lessons are the right thing for you, and maybe when singing lessons are not. And so if you feel like singing lessons is that thing that's going to serve you, is that thing that's going to help you, and you feel like you want to see results, or you want to improve faster, or maybe you don't want to be doing this all on your own, and then I'm going to be dropping a link in the description on how you could work with me. So just make sure to check that out. And apart from that, team, I'll see you next Friday. Remember, you are not your limitations. Take care.